Hello everyone, nubkeks here, and welcome back to Nub Raids and the classic Nub Raids blindingly white spreadsheet. You gotta love them. Well, I love them. I know a lot of you hate them, but honestly, your pain gives me pleasure. I'm evil, I don't know. But what I want to do in today's video, guys, I'm actually recording this a couple of days in advance because I'm going away for a short little break with my girlfriend for a couple of days. It should be pretty nice, actually, going to some Christmas markets, getting in the mood. Yeah, I wanted to. I am right now. I've published my video pulling my shards for Elva, and the community has basically been in a state of uproar for the last couple of days about Elva being a guaranteed champion for 20 sacred shards. It's a price increase, which we never like to see. That straight up sucks. But what I wanted to do today, because I very, very, very strongly, I'm not really one to get too outraged. But what I definitely do believe on, what matters to me, is having consumers be informed. That's what I'm trying to say. An informed consumer is a consumer who can make wise choices that cannot be manipulated and exploited, at least not easily anyway. It's good. It's good for you. It keeps companies in line. I just think it's really important. And, just anger doesn't really get you much. So what I want to do is to actually break down, well, what is a good value for guaranteed versus a 2x event? What are the cutoff points? How does it actually compare? And if Plarium starts changing the prices for these guaranteed champions, I want to give you a tool so that no matter what they change those prices to, whether they make them more expensive or less expensive, you can know how much value that will be for you or how much you're losing out on, okay? Cool, let's do it. Let's break it down. So what I've done, I said, basically, I think a good place to start is going into the chests per year that you get from Clan Boss, right? So we go into our Demon Lord Clan Boss, and I'm imagining a free-to-play player here that is late game, right? That is able to come in and start clearing Ultra Nightmare, right? That this is something you can do. There's me. Hey, wait, there's my team. 81 million. I think about 84 is my record. Anyway, that's beside the point. But someone coming in free to play that's clearing Ultra Nightmare and Nightmare every day. And let's just take that as our ballpark figure. Because obviously you get more shards than that, right? You can get shards from tournaments and events. You get some ancient shards from the market every month, 5 of them, and so on and so forth. But what do we get just from Clan Boss? And let's take that as like something that a typical player can aim for, even free to play, that they can aim for. And these are the drop rates that you get. Boom, here you go. In case you didn't know, let me actually zoom it in slightly so it's easier for you to see as well. These are actually the drop rates for the Clan Boss, right? So on Nightmare difficulty, for 21.34% chance per chest to get an Ancient Shard, 3.05% for Void, 6.1% for Sacred. On Ultra Nightmare, 50.12% for Ancient, 18.22% for Void, and 13.67% for Sacred. You can find lots of information like this, by the way, on my Discord channel. Go to the useful info section. There's also giveaways there and a really great community to chat to. So it's a cool place to hang out. But yeah, you can find the info in there. Thanks to Bobo for data mining this stuff, I believe. I think one interesting thing, by the way, if you were curious, is that the Ancients compared to Sacreds, it goes up it's about twice as good, roughly, slightly better than twice as good. Ultra Nightmare versus Nightmare. When it comes to Voids, it's about 6 times as good. So the amount of void shards you get really increases. And we're assuming that we're going to get the double chests, which you get if your clan kills that difficulty, that you are going to go and get the double chests from each of these every single time it's available, every single day. So that's 730 chests per year, 2 per day for each difficulty. And your expected shards per year doing this on Nightmare, 156 Ancients, 22 Voids, and 45 Sacreds. And Ultra Nightmare, 366 Ancients, 133 Voids, and 100 Sacreds, giving us a total of 522 Ancients per year, 155 Voids per year, and 145 Sacreds per year. Actually, the interesting thing to me was that you get almost the same amount of Voids and Sacreds per year from Clan Boss Demon Lord, which I didn't expect, actually. That's very close together. You would think that you would get more Voids, but they really are tight on the Voids, especially because of Nightmare being so limited. But there you go. So let's go in and now let's break down each of these shard types and compare them to guaranteed events. So let me paste this in bit by bit so it's clear. What we're basically going to do is take the 522 Ancients you get per year, and we are going to examine these in 2x, non-2x, and then guaranteed formats. And these are effectively this. So again, this is very clear information that's in the game. Unlike the clan boss drop rates, which are not in the game, these are very clear. I guess they have to be by law or something. But you by default have a 0.5%. In a 2x event, it goes up to a 1% chance to drop a legendary champion. We're just looking at legendaries here today. That's all we're looking at. So 1% chance in a 2x, 0.5% in a non-2x. And then these are 3 of the benchmarks. We have had guarantees for 120 before. I didn't put these in because I was lazy. But 111 was the cheapest guaranteed legendary from Ancient Shards. 150. Actually, you know what? I will put in the 120. Let's be complete here. Let's do it. Let's be complete. So if we copy this and we make this 120, and I'll go work that out as we go. Let me actually pause. Let me work out the maths on this. I'll be right back. All right, we're back. Didn't take long, actually. But what are our chances then? How does it break down? Well, if we look at the 2x and non-2x first, so pulling in a 2x event with your 1% chance is pretty straightforward, really. You've got that you get 5.22 legendaries per year pulling those Ancient Shards. Not a whole lot, really. And then we're not going to include the non-2x here. We're going to use that with the guaranteed to see how the guaranteed would perform, because obviously pulling for a guaranteed champion is nearly always outside of a 2x event. We want to see, would the guaranteed champions alongside a non-2x event, how do they compare to 2x? So let's see it. So here we go. We've got 111, 120, 150, 200. Before I put the results in, I want you to guess, like, what do you expect? Where's the break-even point with 2x events? Where do you get the same amount of legendaries by giving up that 2x chance? It's the double chance. And here we go. Here are the results. So the number of legendaries you would get with 522 Ancients, assuming that they had, this is obviously hypothetical. They've only ever had one guaranteed champ for 111 Ancients, but it's just to hypothetically see the value. They've had several for 120, lots for 150. They've never had 200, but I think it's something that we need to prepare for just in case. Like, I think the smart thing to do now, which I'm going to do, is try to have 200 Ancients in the bank, just so you don't have to buy shards, that you can just do it completely free to play. If there's a guarantee that you want, you have them saved up, right? 4.7, if it was at 111, that's 4.7 legendaries just from guaranteed. 4.35 if it was at 120, 3.48 from 150, and 2.61 from that. And if we add on the champions that you would get from pulling in that non-2x as well, this is what it comes out at. So when you include the guaranteed champ plus your non-2x champion, at 111, you actually come out with 7.31 legendaries per year. That is compared to the 5.22 of pulling in 2x events with no guaranteed champions. So you actually come out quite a bit ahead, 2 entire legendaries ahead over the course of the year. And actually, the point of comparison here is the 2x actually gives you the same amount of legendaries, roughly speaking, on average, as a guaranteed event for 200 Ancient Shards is where you get the same amount of legendaries, which I think is actually quite shocking. We've never had one this high. But yeah, so there you go. I think it actually means that these guaranteed events down here are actually really good value. Something to consider. I've not factored in Mercy. The Mercy system is more favorable to guaranteed events, right? Because if you're getting on average a legendary every 100 shards, the Mercy system doesn't kick into 200. So you can get super unlucky during a 2x event. And if you actually have to go all the way to Mercy, you're really getting a bad return. Very unlucky for that to happen, but it can happen. Whereas if you're expecting one every 200, it's really, you're straight into Mercy at that point once you start to get a little unlucky. So Mercy system is definitely more favorable to guaranteed. We're not going to go into that in too much detail today, just so you know that is the case. But yeah, I actually think that a guaranteed champion from Ancients for up to 200 shards is actually something that you could consider as being pretty good value. You have also the benefit of knowing what that champion is, so you can see if you want them or not, compared to them being completely random. I'd say one downside is that they theoretically might not do a super good champion for guaranteed, but I actually think that's not quite true. They have a mix. They have some really bad guaranteed champions, and then they have some really good ones as well. There's actually been guaranteed champions from Ancient that I would consider to be S-tier champions, such as Candrafon. I actually consider Staltus to be up there as well. I think they're well worth getting and absolutely worth it. Even if they are 200 shards, I'd say it's a pretty good deal. Now, once it starts going over 200, Even if it's 201, that is where you start losing out very slightly on the number of legendaries that you would typically get with your shards. So an interesting comparison. Let's jump over to void shards, right? Let's jump over to voids. How do voids look? Riddle me this, nubkeks. So what we're going to do here with voids, this is a really interesting one, because with the voids, they've done them before for 80 or 90. Let's hypothetically look then at, let's say, 100, 120, 150, or 200. In fact, let me add in another one. I've seen people say before, in fact, let me add in two other ones. I've seen people say before that the guaranteed voids for 80 are ridiculous value. Plarium is crazy. It makes no sense that they should have guaranteed voids for 30 or maybe 50 shards. So let's compare that as well and see if it makes sense in the context of this. So let me actually add those into we're doing this on the fly. You know, what can we say? So let me add it in and I'll show you the results. All right, the results are in. Let's go. Here we go. So this is what it looks like if we factor these in. First of all, of course, our 2x and our non-2x. So per year for your typical void shards, again, this is a late game free-to-play player, just all of the void shards that you would get, typically getting every single clan boss, nightmare, and ultra nightmare chest per year. You can get some from brutal as well, I believe. I haven't factored those in though. 1.55 legendaries per year during 2x void events, and 0.78 from non-2x. So you can really see why it can feel like forever to get a void legendary, because it really does. You're probably going to get one, maybe two per year if you're pulling all of your void shards in 2x events. That's it. That's all you're going to get, is one, maybe two every year. It's really not a lot. In fact, it's ridiculously sparse. But let's jump in. Let's look at these other things. So then if we look at the guaranteed, how do these compare? And here we go. So if they did guaranteed legendary champions for 30 voids, and you pulled all your 155 during guaranteed 30 void legendary champion events, you get 5.17. And you can see so on 3.1 for 50. The ones they've actually done, 1.94 for 80 and 1.72 for 90. And yeah, there we go. How does this compare? If we add up the non-2x plus these guaranteed, how many would you get? And these are the results. So again, I put these in just because they're totally absurd. But if they did guaranteed legendaries, I literally have got comments saying they should do, the only fair thing for them to do is guaranteed void legendaries for 30 void shards, 5.95. That's almost 4 times as many void legendaries as pulling in a 2x event. And they think that's a thing that will actually happen and is reasonable. And not even that it's reasonable, but that it's only fair and is the only thing that makes sense is quite absurd. Same thing here. You can actually see that even so, 80 and 90, right? You're getting 2.72 or 2.5. You're actually getting a substantial increase on the number of void legendaries, a really huge increase compared to pulling in just 2x events. The downside, of course, is that, well, let's say Riho was for 90. I actually think Riho is a great void legendary, really solid. Not S tier, but probably A tier. So getting her, I think that's a really big benefit. Now with the 80, I think Turvold is great. I think Turvold is actually really underrated. Not S tier, of course, but I think he's a great solid B tier champion. I think he's actually really strong. Fortis, on the other hand, most people consider him to be almost entirely useless. So in that sense, yeah, you're getting more legendaries, but hey, that guaranteed Fortis that you got, kind of useless. So getting extra legendaries if they're useless, not really helpful at all, is it? So that's something to weigh up. Now, the interesting thing here is in terms of where it breaks even, it's no surprise, actually, when you stop and you think about it, be guaranteed void champions for 200. That is where it would break even as getting the same amount of legendaries as you would pulling in 2x voids. That is where guaranteed voids would give the same amount of legendaries as pulling in 2x. It's the same as Ancients, which again is no surprise because if you look at the drop rates, they are actually identical, right? Void shards are functionally identical to Ancient shards in terms of legendary drop rate. So that's how it works out. It actually took me a long time. It really puzzled me, right? Especially these comments saying 30 or 40 or 50 voids is the only reasonable thing. It really puzzled me as to why people thought that was the only fair option. And I kind of thought, is it that just, people struggle to save them up? They either don't or won't save them up. And it just seems unreachable to get to the 80 or 90, which they have been. I think that's definitely an option. I mean, because as you can see, you get maximum, really, 155 per year. It takes a ton of time to save up enough for a guaranteed event, an absolute ton of time. Obviously, winning Clan v Clan Tier 6 personal reward starts to add on more, but that's something that's not in the reach of a typical player at all, right? So I thought that might be part of it. And then I realized, I think another big part of it is that when I'm looking at this, the big question I'm asking is, going in as with my free-to-play shards, with the shards that I am just earning from playing the game, what should I do with them? Should I pull them in a 2x, or should I be saving them for guaranteed? What are my cutoff points for that? That's what I'm asking. And I actually think when a lot of people look at it and those angry comments look at it, I actually think what they're looking at is not those free-to-play shards. They're pulling all their shards, and what they're looking at is this, right? They're coming in and looking at this. They're going, how much does it cost me to buy all these shards, right? And that's where it gets absolutely absurd. Now, that's another question for another day. That's an entire other question. This stuff is ridiculously priced just in general, I think. Not something at all I would recommend. I'm really just recommending you to use your free-to-play shards. And again, whether you should be pulling them in 2x or random 10x events, or whether you should save them for guaranteed, and trying to help you make an informed decision. That's all I'm trying to do. But yeah, I have to say, I was so puzzled by this. People just don't get it, really, in terms of just analyzing that. Anyway, whatever. Let's move on. Sacreds then. I say we've got 1, 4, 5 sacreds. Same thing. And what we're going to compare here, 2x, non-2x. So you actually, the 12, this is where the chances are different, right? 12% in a 2x, 6% in a non-2x. And these are the three different values for sacred guaranteed champions that we've had. 12, we had that once with Sissia. 15 has been the one that's been there forever. And then 20 is the most recent one with Elva. How does it break down? Well, just again, if you are curious, right? So from just your default pull rates here, that are the most common events, right? In a 2x event with 12%, you're going to get 17.4 legendaries per year. Actually, a lot compared to the others, right? It's a lot more. Sacreds are your biggest source of legendaries. Yeah, they're your biggest source, right? Fusions, you're going to have 12 per year. You'll get more from your sacreds at late game than you will from fusions and all that. In non-2x, you'll get 8.7 per year, 8.7. What about these guaranteed then? So this is how it works out, right? If all the guaranteed sacreds were 12 and you spent all of your sacreds in a year on guaranteed events for 12 sacreds, which again has never happened, but it's hypothetical, you would get 12.08 legendaries. For 15, 9.67. For 20, 7.25. Now, the important thing is, let's assume, because of course you're getting those non-2x rates, how do they compare? And this is how it compares. So at 12 sacreds for a guaranteed legendary, including those rates, you'd walk away at 20.78. So again, a very substantial increase over 2x events. I think that guaranteed Sissy event is one of the best they've ever done. And by the way, I saw a ton of comments of people saying it was terrible value at the time and she absolutely was not worth 12 sacred shards. This is crazy. To me, that is crazy because she is like an end game viable champion, both in Hydra and in spider farming. She's end game really important. So that was a weird one. But like, you're getting about 3 more legendaries. It's a substantial increase. It's almost as many as you're going to get. It's about half of the ones you're going to get total from ancients in an entire year. That's about 6 months of ancient shard legendaries right there by going for guaranteed if they were 12 sacred. So unfortunately, it's unlikely they're going to do many of those again. And if they did, they probably wouldn't be very good champions, at least nowhere near as good as Sissia was. For 15, it's actually very close, 18.37. It is actually slightly better. And I do think that apart from Helior, the guaranteed champs from Sacreds for 15 have been very, very solid. So I think that has been a good investment. And this is where it's interesting with Elva. This is the first time that we're going below the cutoff point. Okay, so this is the first time we are below the cutoff point where 17.4 is the amount of legendaries we get from 2x events. Now we're going down to 15.95. So now we're losing out on, what's that, 1.5 legendaries in a year. So now we're starting to lose out on champions. So that is where this becomes, I think, a more difficult question. Whereas I do think that before, certainly with voids being, 80 to 90, and all of these haven't been things before, yeah, I can actually highly recommend guaranteed events. Now I'm sitting down and putting that outrage aside and actually looking at it properly. Even if we really hope that they keep Ancients at 150, obviously, we really do. And I really like the 120 ones as well. I think they're great. 111, they did it once. I don't know if they'll go back to that, but obviously that's super welcome. Nobody wants to see this stuff increase, but even if they did increase it, I think it still remains a very reasonable thing for you to do and worth saving your shards to do, possibly all the way up to 200 would be my recommendation. And then you can make the decision of, do you want the guaranteed champion or not? If you don't want them, then great, go pull your Ancients in a 2x event instead. And happy days, right? For the Voids, we're well good, honestly, on the 80 and 90. Yeah, we're making hella bank there, though the Void Legendaries have been a very questionable quality overall, I would say. So that's definitely something you can consider. Getting less chance at the S tier Void Legendaries, but getting way more Legendaries in general is what it looks to be. And again, I would say it's not crazy. I could easily see them doing one for 100. 120 is not outside of the limit, considering they jumped from 15 Sacreds to 20. It might be safe to save 120 Voids. That would be my recommendation. And then, hey, you're going to have extra saved up already. You're going to be a good chunk towards saving for the next guaranteed when it comes out, and it's 90. So happy days there, right? That's what I would do. So I would be trying to save for 120 Voids, just in case. I think it's unlikely they jump up that far. It seems, I suspect the Void events, they're not sure. I think, by the way, in terms of where they price these, I think that the key point is not in terms of the value to the player, because obviously Plarium is aware of all of this. In case, because you do see comments about that sometimes, like, oh, don't tell Plarium. They obviously know all of this. No, that's not what their decision making is about. What their decision making about is they've got game psychologists in there, and yeah, they basically have psychological analysts in there working out how much people are willing to spend, how much people are willing to buy to get these champions. And they're working out they're keeping track of the typical amount of shards that people have access to, how much they are willing to buy, how much you put into the shop that they're willing to buy, etc. And that is how they price these. They have these priced so that people will typically need to buy shards and will buy shards to get them because of FOMO, right? Fear of missing out. That is what is going on. So there's a whole lot of psychological analysis going on. I think that is why the Voids have been so good, is because, you know, thank God for people being really bad at maths and statistics, right? Because people feel like they should be 30 or 50. It's fantastic. It's great, because that drags the price down, because they're not going to be willing to pay this much, because it is a crazy amount of money if you actually had to buy that many in the shop. Like, what do they typically sell a Void chart for? Like, if it's, what is it? Like, if it was €4 or $4, like, that's $800. It's madness. Absolute crazy. It's saving for over a year. It's saving for like a year and 4 months, right? That's nuts. It's not something people are going to do. So because that's not something realistic, they're not going to make bank off that. So, you know, that works in our favor. The Plarium's crazy pricing drags this down for the free-to-play person who's willing to save, but it's just a big old weight. But yeah, anyway, we come to the Sacreds. If you're interested, by the way, where the Sacred cutoff is, it's actually 16.67, I believe, Sacreds is where it actually comes out as this, right, for guaranteed. So that's what's actually going on there, if you're curious, right? So actually really not far past 15. 15 is super close. 16 is still slightly better value, and then 17 is slightly worse value than 2x in terms of total legendaries expected. So yeah, I thought that was quite interesting. Yeah, but yeah, 20 is the first time they've done one of these events where, in my opinion, it works out as being very much a question mark in terms of value. It completely depends on the quality of the champion for your account. Like, for me, Elva was a no-brainer because I just don't have many champions like her, and she's very, very good. So it was a no-brainer for me. I'm totally happy to give up, you know, 1.5, even 2 or 3 random legendaries for the sake of getting one that I know is perfect for what I need, you know, over 2 years into the game. It's perfect for my account. That's difficult to get, so that's definitely a worthwhile trade. But yeah, so there you go. Guys, what do you think in terms of the guaranteed? I thought it was just helpful to break it down and make it clear and to really show you some of these cutoff points and to help you make those decisions in the future if this stuff starts changing. So you can go in and you can work it out, you know, what sort of return you're going to get on the stuff that you're buying or buying or earning in game, right? Either way you want to do it. So yeah, hopefully you found it helpful. Thank you for watching. I think I've basically said everything I want to say. So yeah, I think it's pretty clear. Thanks for watching. See you next time. Bye-bye.